0 of the Backyard Mechanic. Figured we'd tell you about this new show and why a new show on wrenching on cars and bikes and stuff and engines. Well, to tell you the truth, I've been doing this kind of stuff all my life, but I've never really got into building anything advanced. Just, family and money and time always seem to be an issue. And a couple of years ago, I got really inspired by another YouTube show, which has gone on to hit it big, called Roadkill. And so I really like what they're doing, because all my life growing up, I had read, hot rod magazines and stuff like that, but it was always stuff that was out of reach. It was stuff that the average guy, that's got a family and kids and other, a lot of constraints on his time, unless he has a ton of money to have somebody else build it for him, it wasn't accessible. And for me, I don't like having other people build my stuff anyway. The part of the fun of it is me building it myself. So when I saw that show came out and started watching it, it showed me things that were a lot more accessible and what you could do. They still have more time and money than I do, but they were out there doing stuff, and that inspired me to get back in my backyard and start working on my stuff that had been sitting around for years. Realistically, this old girl here, I've had her about 10 or 12 years now, and she's my daily driver, but she did sit idle for 5 years as well when I broke a transmission in her and just never got around to fixing it. So I started wrenching on stuff all the time, just got back into it, just taking my free time and getting into it, spending a little bit of money, and but not a lot. Doing most of the things manual labor, just because I don't have the extra money. These are all, vehicles I've collected over the years and have just become project vehicles along the way. And I started posting stuff that I was doing on Facebook, and I had a few of my friends say, "Hey, I really enjoy watching all your posts on wrenching." And I finally got to thinking about it. I was like, well, if they're enjoying watching the posts on it, maybe they'd enjoy just watching the show. And a couple of years ago, I made an aborted attempt at doing this. Basically, when I was getting the truck back on the road, I was converting her to a manual transmission and stuff, and there was a lot of cool stuff going on, but it was a lot of work. And I tried to get too set up with the video. I was using digital SLRs and stuff like that, and trying to make sure everything was perfect. And honestly, it took anything I was doing, it took me 4 or 5 times longer. So I was never going to get finished. So I finally gave up, said, this is something I can't do. Then about a month ago, I was doing, again, people were saying, "Oh, it's cool watching you do all this stuff." And I was sitting here thinking about it. Is there a way I can do it? And I've been watching Roadkill, and they do a lot of stuff with GoPros and stuff like that. And nowadays, those are fairly affordable on eBay and stuff. So I went ahead and I'm collecting some of those, and it's something I can set up quick and do. And I wanted to prove that out before I shot this episode. So I've actually already finished all the raw shooting for the first episode, and the videoing really didn't take much time, which for me works out. So that's going to be a good thing. Forgive me for these first episodes as I start learning the technical aspects of things I got to think of. The first episode was actually all shot on a cell phone, and so the big problem with that is I couldn't see what I was videoing. So the first episode, you're going to see there's a lot of things where the shooting angle could have been a little better and stuff like that, but we'll get better with time. So that being said, let me take you for a quick introduction. I'll do a full introduction later on some short episodes I'm going to do. But let me take you for a quick tour of the project vehicles I have right now. One of them is missing. So it's off having a race tube chassis put in it. It's actually my brother's car, and so he's paying to have a chassis put in it, or at least a roll cage, and it had floors since the floors were built of rust. So we'll have one car coming back here in about a month and a half that we'll be doing work on too. So lots of fun stuff. I hope you enjoy it. Let me give you a walk around the car. So this first one we got here is actually a pretty small motorcycle. This is a Suzuki TU250X, and I bought this when money was really tight. This is actually what I bought when my truck broke down, and I bought it because it got good fuel mileage and it was fun and it was a motorcycle, and I hadn't had a running motorcycle in a number of years, so really got a lot of enjoyment out of this. Took it to the Bonneville Salt Flats in 2011, which from my home is a 700-mile one-way ride. So I ended up doing a 14-hour ride both directions, non-stop on this motorcycle, all loaded down with camping gear as I camped on the mud flats. Like I said, I wasn't made of money back then, not that I am now, but had even less of it. So we were sleeping on the salt. So it was one of those things that taught me I can do whatever I want as long as I'm willing to figure out how to do it. Next vehicle we have up, this is actually the one I've owned the least amount of time, but I've known the longest. This is a car that my parents bought in 1973, and it's a original 67 Chevelle SS. And I originally started this as a project with my dad and my brothers in 2015, and then unfortunately due to some medical issues and stuff, that project kind of stalled, and then my brother ended up taking on the project, and he ended up losing a little interest in it, and so through a series of trades and stuff, I have acquired this car, so it's now mine. I only have owned it for about 2 months now. So, but like I said, known it all my life. This was the car my mom drove me to school in when I was a little kid, so fun car. Next up, this is my wife's daily driver. These, if you're looking for a Jeep and you're careful, you can get one of these. And the cool thing about these is they're the only Jeep made that is a 7-passenger. And we bought this because we were looking for a bigger vehicle because we got 2 little kids, and we wanted something to go off-roading because we knew, again, money tight and trying to do as much as we can for as little as possible. We decided we wanted to do a lot of camping. We like camping as it is, so we decided we wanted a Jeep so that we could go off-road to places people couldn't get, and so we could go off and be alone. These things are the cheapest way to get into a 4-wheel drive Jeep too. They just don't seem to be that popular. We bought this one for $6,000. It was a pretty good deal. Had a lot of miles on it, but since I know how to wrench on stuff, that doesn't really bother me. But it's pretty cool. Seat 7. If you do look for one of these, at least make sure it has the trail rated badge on it, because you lose some of your off-road performance if you don't have the features that accompany that badge. The main one being this has got a low range locking transfer case. If it doesn't have that badge on it, you can pretty much guarantee it's just got a standard open differential non-low range case in it. And if you're going to go off-roading, you know, eventually you're going to want the extra features of the locking low range case. Out of all the vehicles I'm going to show you today, this is the one I've owned the second longest. I actually got this from a co-worker in 2007, 2008. She was talking about hauling it off to a junkyard, and so I was able to get it off of her, and had it had been sitting for 6 years. I had it running that same day, and it has since been hot rodded and tuned up a little bit. It's still unfortunately running an old bottom end on it. It's got about 200,000 miles on it, maybe even a little bit more. But it's got newer heads on it. Well, new old heads, rebuilt heads on it. New cam in it because it flattened the cam lobe, and runs pretty strong. Most people are really surprised how strong she runs, but I'm working on a new engine for her, so because she's coughing up a little bit of soot out of the left pipe, and I know there was a ring ridge in there, so I think she's probably got some damage to that number 5 cylinder. So, but still runs good. Drive her every day. So. Next up, we have my 2011 Harley Sportster. This one specifically started life as a Nightster, but it's been changed a lot since then. It's got drag bars on it, the short shot pipes on it, new intake. It's got a race computer in it. It's got extended shocks in the back that I want to extend further. It's got that dopey backrest on it that I'm going to take off. I had that on for long trips with my wife, but I normally don't like that piece on there. But it's been a good bike. It's got a few issues at the moment. It's been ridden really, really hard. I typically ride it harder than most people ride their sport bikes, so eventually I'll share an old video I shot of this going down the Devil's Highway on eastern Arizona. But there are some things I want to do to it. I want to extend the front fork travel a little bit. There's with the Nightster, they run short shock dampening rods in it, so it doesn't have a lot of travel, and when you're really on it going through the corners, you bottom out the suspension. So as it was when it came, that rear fender only sat an inch off the tire, so you can see how much the rear end's been raised. Probably going to raise the rear end another inch as well. This car I've been really excited about. I can't wait to get it running. I made a heck of a deal on this car last May, and it's really clean. It's got no rust in it, except for the seats. The interior is in really, really, really good shape. Needs to have the seats redone, but the carpet's decent. The door panels are decent. It's got air conditioning that did work, kind of. Well, it turned over, it never got cold, but I had to do some engine work. When I bought it, it was running on 7, and I was hoping for it to be a quick, easy fix, but it ended up being a burned valve. So I've put in new valves and redid the heads a little bit, just a quick redo on the heads, and she runs good now. I just need to get her down to emissions and get her registered. But this is going to become the new daily driver, because my truck's going to become a little more drag race oriented, and mainly because I've had 2 kids in the last 2 years, and I can't fit 4 people in the truck, but this will seat 6, so it'll be a fun car to play with. Hot rod. I wanted a Cleveland based engine. This has a 400 in it, which is for all intents and purposes a tall deck Cleveland. So it's going to be a fun car to play with. This is actually the vehicle I've owned the longest and has been most neglected in my stable. This is a legendary Kawasaki Z1. It's actually a Z1B, meaning it's a 75 model. This my dad bought brand new in 1975, and he rode it until 82. Um, and then a series of mishaps caused it to end up sitting to where I bought it from him in 1991. A couple of odd features. Well, I mean, guess not odd, but I have all the parts to make it stock, except for the front wheel. It has a KZ front wheel on it. That's because this bike was actually stolen once, and when it got recovered, it had a KZ front wheel on it, and it had a bubble fairing on it that weren't stock, and the baffle was missing out of the exhaust. So, but other than that, it was fine. In 82, a mishap happened while adjusting the cam chain, and the exhaust cam jumped a tooth, and all of the valves got hit in the cylinder head. So all of the valves needed to be replaced, which my dad started to have done. And then when he went after it, when they pulled the guides out to replace the valve guides, one of the valve guides took a bunch of cylinder head material out with it. So that kind of stifled the rebuild on it. He did have it bushed in the head and got the guides put back in. I eventually, like I said, bought it off him in 91, and when I did, I went ahead and finished putting the heads together. I got the valve seats cut, got the valves lapped in, got them all assembled, went through and put new rings and stuff in it, got the engine all back together, and then I lost interest in it. So this has probably been sitting untouched since about 93. So I've always wanted to ride this motorcycle. I've actually only been on it once when I was a little kid, and have never ridden it. So that's the quick story on all the vehicles I have in the yard. Other things you're going to see are engine builds. I have an engine I need to disassemble and go through for the Chevelle. That's probably going to be one of the first ones you see, just because it's that Chevelle I intend on having running this summer, so that's going to be top of my list. I also have a 302 that is built, but I need to make some checks on piston to head clearance, because I think there's a slight interference there. So we'll be taking the heads off of that and looking into it. And that engine will be for the missing car, which is a 1960 Falcon. That's my brother's car. Other than that, you're going to see transmission work being done. I got a series of manual transmissions that need to be either gone through or just checked out or put in. I have one for this truck that I'm going to put in, because I got a Tremec 3550 that I put in here, which I really enjoyed. But even though this is a small FE engine, the weight of the truck and everything, it seems to be hurting that Tremec. Plus, with me being drag racing it, those really aren't the best drag racing transmissions. I also need something cheap, so if I break them, I can have a spare. So I'm looking at putting top loader 3-speeds in there. The other thing you're going to see is bucket list items. You're going to see road trips, off-road trips, and visiting the drag strip and visiting autocross. You're going to see all those things, because those are all things that, bucket lists. I've actually never been on a drag strip. I've always wanted to, so this truck's going to be hitting the drag strip at some point. Obviously, that Falcon with my brother is going to be hitting the drag strip. The Suzuki is probably, if I ever get the time, going to go to the Bonneville Salt Flats to try and see if I can get a license and set a small record at Bonneville, although it'll be a tough job for that bike. The Z1 may also be going to Bonneville to try and set some records there. Or at least these are things on my bucket list. So Anyway, hopefully it'll be a show you're interested in following and following along as I try to do the things that I've always wanted to do all my life, and hopefully it'll inspire you to do the things you've always wanted to do all your life and go out and have some fun with vehicles and cars and motorcycles and stuff. Have a great day.